Electricity is a cool effect for fantasy and sci-fi, and is also a lot of fun to animate. There are some things you need to be aware of if you want it to feel properly intense and impactful. Avoid using anything resembling the symbol of lightning or electricity, something like this that's made up of jagged, straight lines. A much better shape is more similar to the branches of a tree. This has a lot of sharp points, but is also made up pretty much entirely of curving lines rather than straight ones. The thickness can also range a lot, from sections that are very wide to thin, fine lines. The motion, in most cases, will have a lot of randomness. A branch of electricity can be shifting in the same direction for multiple frames, and then suddenly snap the other way. It helps for an animation like this to start with this simple shape to get the main motion in place, and then you can add more detail after that simple motion looks good. These details can include thorn or claw-like shapes, thinner, offshooting branches, and arches that branch out and then reconnect back to the main section. Because this is a fast motion, details typically shouldn't carry over into the next frames, or at least not be placed too close to their previous locations. The speed doesn't come across if it isn't sporadic enough. This arch, for example, appears suddenly and exists for just 2 frames. This type of animation can be done with multiple branches coming off a source of electricity, like I'm doing for this Pikachu. There are times where a slow animation is actually better, when you would animate each frame looking similar and spaced closely to the previous one. This can happen right before the effect explodes with a big burst of energy, or is about to shoot out quickly. Another occasion for this is when it hits something. I've made the electricity in this animation move slowly when it's about to shoot out forward, and then slowly again when it impacts the circle. Also notice that in these slow frames during the impact, the thickness of the main branch shifts from being closer to the source to closer to the object being hit, like it's building up from the collision. This Pikachu animation is another case where things can slow. I gave the electricity here a gradually expanding motion just before it suddenly explodes outward in all directions. This gives the explosion a bit more impact. The animation right now still doesn't have very much of a powerful, impactful feeling though. Flickering and flashing effects are important for making electricity believable. Go through your animation and add some blank frames where the electricity briefly disappears. This can happen occasionally, or sometimes very rapidly. Extra bright flashes can also happen randomly, as well as on impact like with this circle, or just when anything about the effect suddenly and dramatically changes. There's different ways to do them, the simplest being filling the entire screen with white. Another is filling the screen with black, and then using some white, maybe more simple and graphic shapes. The length of time that the flickers and flashes hold for should be based on what feels right to you, though this shouldn't be long, and I found 1 frame while animating on 2s or 12 FPS, and holding it for 2 frames when on 24 FPS usually looks good. You don't need to worry too much about overdoing the flashing unless your animation is played on loop, in which case it could become excessive if you add too much or if it loops too quickly, so do be a bit careful about that. In order to make the electricity feel like a proper light source that has an effect on the environment around it, an easy thing to do is add a color filter on top of the scene. Dramatic shadows on nearby characters and objects contributes to this as well. When the source of electricity is moving, it creates a flowing motion where the electricity is being dragged along. Be sure that it doesn't drag so much that it looks like it's being weighed down by gravity though. It helps to think of how hair with static electricity might move, always wanting to stick out. One more thing to add to this is that when the motion speeds up, the electricity can stretch more as it's pulled along, and when it slows down, it tends to be a bit shorter and maybe thicker. The final touches you add depend a bit on what options your program gives you. I've added a glow by duplicating my layer, giving it color, and then putting that duplicate underneath with a blur filter. After that, I gave the top layer a slight motion blur. This makes the edges of the shapes look a bit more natural. I have more videos on effects animation that you could watch next, like this one about animating water. Thank you to all the members on my Patreon, and thanks for watching.